question asked in the second season episode of Star Trek Voyager called Tuvix. And the question we're going to be discussing here on superhero ethics. I'm Matthew, your host. I'm joined by Riki, my co-host. Riki, how are we doing today, and how are you feeling about talking about Star Trek?
I'm always down to talk about Star Trek, and I'm surprised we haven't done it more, quite frankly. Hello. Oh,
I'm sorry, I missed all of that. Can you start that again?
yeah, you're cutting in and out as well.
Yeah, I'm worried it's because of the snow is affecting my internet, but let's try again.
Okay. Well, yeah, I'm always excited to talk about Star Trek, Matthew, and I'm surprised we haven't done it before this. I believe this is the first time we are dealing with a solely Star Trek issue, and I hope to do it more because there are a lot of standout episodes like this one, like Tuvix, where there's a central ethical, moral dilemma that speaks
Mm-hmm.
to, larger issues. And it's just a very well done episode in general.
Yeah. I think I'd really agree with that. I've talked before about how Star Trek is kind of my bread and butter in terms of ethical discussions in science fiction, because this was the show my mother loved. She loved the original series. She thought Next Generation was okay. I don't think she ever watched the newer ones. And she passed away long before Discovery and things like that. But she and I would watch original episodes of the. She and I would watch episodes of the original series, and she'd ask me about the questions and comparing them and talking about how they applied to real life. And I've said many times, that's kind of, for me, the point of this episode is to really honor and talk about that kind of science fiction and fantasy and storytelling. We expand it pretty wide, that raises questions that have relevance for our own world. And I think part of what I like about this episode so much, and Star Trek, I think, does this a lot, and especially the Orville does this as well. It's one thing to create a science fiction or a fantasy or anything like that is very clearly just an exact one-for-one analog of something in our current world, where you're making a point about that. And I think that's fine. I think sometimes I think that's really interesting and sometimes really needed. But I think science fiction is really at its best where, instead of being an exact mirror, it says, okay, what if we take that question or that whole range of questions in humanity at the moment and put them into a different light, and put them with a very different spin that makes us question them in a whole new ways. Because to me, the point of this, there's an extent to which the basis of this episode is that two of the main characters, Tuvok and Neelix. Tuvok is a Vulcan and is the security officer and sort of the best friend and confidant of Janeway, the captain. And he's often played off as the very opposite of Neelix. Neelix is a Tulaxian, a character we haven't seen in Star Wars before because they come from the Delta Quadrant in Star Trek. I'm sorry, I'm going to keep making that mistake in Star Trek, which they are now exploring. And he's very much the McCoy to Mr. Tuvok Spock, except instead of being sort of gloomy and emotional, he's happy and emotional, and he's bouncy, and he always is trying to cheer up Mr. Tuvok in all sorts of ways, or as he refers to him, Mr. Vulcan. And the two of them are put on a mission. And during the course of the mission, because of Star Trek science, there's a transporter accident, and the two of them get merged into one being. And this one being has a lot of the elements of both. It has a lot of the logic and technical skill and tactical skill that Tuvok has, while still having the humor and good nature of Neelix, and being able to do a lot of the skills of both, but in some ways better. Able to be a great leader of the security forces, but also relate to them more with humor. Able to be a cook, but actually a better cook.
A better cook. Humorously.
Also somehow having enough hours in the day to do both of those full-time jobs, which apparently is another part of Star Trek science that we're not going to even get into. But as the episode comes to an end, they realize that there's a scientific way to undo this process and to remove Tuvix, which is what this sort of conjoined being calls themselves, because it's a new being. It is not Tuvok or Neelix. It's a new being, and they have a way to bring back the original two, which will of course erase Tuvix. And erase is one word you could use for it. Tuvix himself says, "This is murder. You are going to kill me by doing this." and he appeals to the goodwill of the crew and sort of says Janeway, because Janeway decides that they're going to go forward with this. Tuvix appeals to her and makes this kind of like, and here's part of what makes the episode so interesting, the kind of very ethical appeal that in Star Trek is supposed to convince us, or convince us that the people acting against wrong. And instead, Janeway goes ahead and does the thing. The Doctor be a part of it because he says he cannot do no harm. That doesn't attack the Doctor, but do all the things to press the transporter button, to do the radio IC makes it possible. And we and Neelix back, and no one's sort of saying whether this was the right or wrong decision. So that just kind of give it a more framing. And Riki, what do you think of her decision?
Well, I want to start first by, in terms of framing, just go over the, I guess, biography of this episode real
Yeah, go
quick.
for it.
So this is season 2 of Voyager, episode 24 of the season. So it's very late in season 2. Overall, it was the 40th episode of the show. The story was written by Andrew Shepard Price and Mark Gaberman. The teleplay by Kenneth Biller. And then it was directed by Cliff Bowl. It aired on May 6th, almost May 4th, 1996. So for listeners who aren't aware, I want to remind people, like, television was very different in the 90s. Just based on the episode count, right? Episode 24, like most TV shows had 26 episodes per season. So it was a very long season. You have to have what we often describe as filler episodes. And this is definitely a filler episode, right? In terms of what Star Trek Voyager is, it doesn't advance really the main plot of getting them home sooner. There's no overarching like villain of the season. I believe season 2 they were still dealing with like the Kazon. So there's nothing that interacts with the overall main plots of the show. So this is filler, but this is amazing filler. And going back to your question, what do I think of her decision? Well, I mean, just in one sentence, I'll say it's murder. It's capital punishment. And I think it's wrong.
That's fair. That's fair. Yeah, I let me just start with the framing of it, and then we can get into like the rights and wrongs of it and all of the stuff that surrounds it. I think you're right that in some way it is filler, but it is filler of the very best kind. And the thing that I think is so often lost in the Disney Plus miniseries kind of era that we're living in now, because, and I love serialized storytelling, but there's another kind of storytelling that episodic can be a part of, where it is episodic, but it's also like the episodes are part of a longer theme. Because the whole point of Star Trek Voyager is what happens when a particular Voyager is teleported, all the way across the galaxy, has no communication anymore with their friends, their family, with Starfleet, with anything else. They're completely on their own, and they have to figure out what to do to survive and get back. And in terms of Janeway, her overall story is the need to, frankly, become harder and harder as a person because of the need to make these very unfortunate decisions that sometimes we may disagree with and sometimes we may, but that I think that Janeway feels that she has to make in order to let the ship survive and her crew survive and her crew get home. And that I think the question that she's wrestling with throughout the show is, when and where can I live to my principles, and when and where should I abandon my principles in order to do what seems more pragmatic or more efficient in the moment, rather than what is my principle would say. And I think that for that reason, episodes like this kind of are the heart of the show, in that they are it's filler, in that it's a one-off episode. Or bad, to me, this episode is an essential part of that journey of how she gets there. So it's like it's filler, but also it's essential to the story.
Yeah, absolutely. The thing for me that I don't like about Voyager as a show is that it doesn't come back to things. Like
Yeah.
the episodic nature is like a fire and forget. Like we wrote this episode, it's excellent. The name Tuvix is never mentioned again in Voyager.
Yeah.
Right? And this is supposed to be like a very important issue, not just for us as viewers, but for the people on the show. Like the episode itself takes place over, I don't know, I'd probably say weeks,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like they have kind of montage things where we are shown Tuvix like doing the job of Tuvok and Neelix and interacting with crew members and giving the sense that time has passed. And that's part of the important thing. Like this isn't just a Tuvix existed for a day and like we're switching it back. Like no, Tuvix was a part of the crew for I'm like again, I'm gonna say weeks,
Yeah.
if not months, maybe. And given a chance to be a person
Yeah.
on the ship, and that's part of the issue here. And I also want to go back and say the actor who plays Tuvix, his name is Tom Wright. So they got a completely different actor from Tim Russ and Ethan Phillips, who play Tuvok and Neelix respectively, and
Mm-hmm.
he came in and kind of drew upon like his knowledge of, you know, they filled him in on the characters he was portraying, and he watched some episodes and also like interacted with the actors themselves to get some of their mannerisms, and he did an excellent job. Like Tom Wright is part of the reason this is so effective, is that we
100%.
feel like he is a distinct person, but we recognize the elements of the other two in him. So he did an excellent job.
Yeah.
And that's
good.
And that's part of it, is like we as the audience feel this weight.
Yeah.
Because we're like, oh yeah, like Tuvix, like we are engineered by the show to like the other two because we've interacted with them for a season and a half, almost 2 seasons. And I think there's a television show conceit that, yeah, like the other two are coming back. Like we can't get
Mm-hmm.
rid of them.
Right.
But gosh darn, like what if we had Tuvix for the rest of the show, right?
Cut this. The one who's absolutely great. Her. Me.
I'm not getting anything right now. I don't know if you can hear me, and I don't know how the recording goes on your end, but I've just got silence right now. And they're gone. So there you go. Well, hello. I don't know if this is going to make the final cut, but if you're listening, I appreciate it. Shout out to my internet provider, Giggle Fiber, here in California. Doing an excellent job with my weather, which is fine. California weather. It was 80 degrees yesterday. Oh,
Yeah,
hello.
we
Are
have
you back?
so we're turn off. That'll help us link up better.
You said turn off. I assume you mean camera.
Yes.
Okay. Done.
Here.
You like I got nothing after I said, wouldn't it be great if we had Tuvix for the rest of the show?
Right. That's when I cut off. But are you hearing me okay now?
No, I wouldn't say okay. You're cutting in and out. I can like make out the sentences.
All right.
And now I'm doing hand motions even though my camera's off.
Right.
That's
No, I understand.
talk.
I'm just trying to figure out how to fix this.
Well, keep talking so that I can kind of get a feel.
Okay. So yeah, so here I am talking. Well, I also want to make sure that I'm not being recorded in a screwed up way. So I'm going to try one other thing.
So that right there was fine.
Okay, that was fine.
Yeah.
So I'd say if there's stuff through, tell me, and I will redo it. And if that becomes a huge annoyance, we can.
Yeah, you're cutting out on that one.
God damn it! This is frustrating. Now am I? Let's close down.
I'm not hearing anything.
Yep. No, sorry, I wasn't saying anything. I'm just closing down every other program on my computer. That also helps. All right. Are you hearing me now decently?
That sounded okay.
Okay. Okay. So let me try that and we'll see how we go. Yeah, I think you're right. I think that that's all very well done in terms of how they frame this. I will say personally, I can't stand Neelix as a character, but I think a lot of people disagree with me, and that's completely fine. But I did like Tuvok quite a lot of it. And I think you're right. Actor who is Tuvix, there's never a moment where I doubt that this isn't a synthesis of these two characters, either in terms of physicality, which I think is both also just both in terms of how he looks, which I'll say is also just an incredible credit to the makeup department, because they really do make him look like a fusion of those two very different looking characters. But also in terms of the way he acts, like I always sort of feel like this isn't like half Tuvok, half Neelix. This is a synthesis of those two in a way where it's like, it's much more a mix than it is like two distinct different parts. And I agree with you. And I think that makes
You've gone silent again.
it, and you may change my mind during the course of this. And that's definitely part of the discussion.
I missed most of that.
Damn it. All right. Let's try something else. Let me try switching to the Google Hangouts we used to do, and just each of us. Do you still have access to Audacity?
It's on my desktop, but it's
Good to do this.
I'm gonna have to install an update that I don't know how long that will take.
Because you have to reinstall it.
Let's see what happens. Oh no, it's quick. Do you want to allow this app to make changes?
But just so I can hear if my sound quality that's getting recorded is really bad. So give me 1 minute.
Yeah.